and gentlemen, please welcome Paul Nuttall.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming out. I understand that we have somewhat electoral fatigue at the moment around the country. You know, we wake up every single morning, don't we? We see Miliband and Cameron and Clegg, to a lesser extent Nigel Farage, all making announcements on a daily basis. We turn on our radio, we hear even more politicians. And I think you've done well to come out tonight to listen to another politician. I go around the country, I speak at events, as far north as Carlisle, as far south as Cornwall, and I must say there's a real appetite out there for change within society. And UKIP are the drivers of that change, none more so than here in the northeast of England. And I've been up on a number of occasions now since January, and there's a real appetite, not just within the party, but externally as well, for what UKIP has to say. We've seen a real rise in the party over the past couple of years here in the northeast. Membership has trebled. And we now have an MEP up here, Jonathan Arnott, who's doing a fantastic job on behalf of the people of the northeast, not just protecting your interests, but protecting the interests of Britain out in Brussels and Strasbourg, because our MEPs have a real code of conduct. And number one on that is that we will never vote for any legislation that transfers powers from our great country to faceless bureaucrats in Brussels. Up here now, you have councillors elected across the northeast. And what we need to make that a perfect treble is an MP to boot as well. And we are campaigning hard in constituencies up and down the region, none more so than here tonight in Wansbeck. What we endeavour is that we become the opposition to Labour up here in the northeast, because we feel that the Labour Party over the past 20 years has let you down time and time again. During those 13 years of Labour in power, the gap between rich and poor got wider. The north-south divide actually grew. And what did the Labour politicians in London do to stand up for the people of the northeast? Well, the answer is pretty much zilch, considering that if you look at London today, it has £5,500 spent on it per head when it comes to infrastructure, when up here in the northeast it runs at around £300 per person. It isn't good enough. You're not getting bang for your buck. These people are not putting your case forward in Westminster, and the one thing I will guarantee is that if you elect UKIP MPs, we will bang the drum on behalf of the people of the northeast, and we will get you a better deal than you've ever had before. You see, you have a Labour Party that has been hijacked by a right-on metropolitan North London political set that doesn't hold the ideals that you have anymore, that looks down its nose at people in working class communities, that looks at your views and thinks that somehow they are not good enough anymore. And it is a Labour Party that has attempted to change the attitudes of this country into those of an Islington dinner party. And we are saying enough of that. We want to represent the people who have been left behind by Labour, who look at the Labour politicians and say, you know what, you don't look like me, you don't sound like me, you never give a straight answer to a straight question. What we in UKIP do is we tell it how it is. We speak about things that the political class and the establishment find unpalatable. We tackle issues that they don't want to talk about. We straight talk. We say what we mean, and we mean what we say. And do not believe the scare stories and the slurs that you see in the media about UKIP. Indeed, you had Chukwuemeka, Labour's shadow business secretary, earlier this week saying that UKIP was somehow racist. Well, I would like to know how we're racist when we as a party have more ethnic candidates than the Liberal Democrats and the Greens. Ladies and gentlemen, there is nothing racist about raising the issue of immigration, about saying that you feel uncomfortable with the amount of people that are coming into this country. You feel uncomfortable with the negative effects that it is having on society as a whole, the pressure that it is putting on the NHS, the pressure that it puts on our transport network, the pressure that it puts on our schools. Immigration can be good, ladies and gentlemen, but it has to be controlled. We cannot have a situation like we had last year, where a city the size of Hull came to this country net. 298,000 people. It makes no sense to have a situation like that when you have 850,000 of our own young people who are unemployed. And what we're saying in UKIP is we're offering common sense solutions. We want to take immigration back down to sensible levels, normality, like it was between 1950 and 1997, where it ran net at somewhere between 30 and 50,000. And how would we do this? Well, we would take a leaf out of the book of Australia, an Australian points-based system, which says if you have the skills that this country needs, yes, please come here and work, but we would never allow people to come to this country and take out to the system without ever putting in first. We have common sense policies when it comes to the National Health Service. As Melanie said, we want to see £3 billion a year put into the NHS. We want to keep it free at the point of delivery and funded solely out of taxation. And do not believe the Labour scare stories when they say that UKIP wants some sort of an American private system. It's nonsense. And excuse me, I will not take lessons off the Labour Party when it comes to the NHS. This is a party that when it was in power between 1997 and 2010, privatised 4.5% of the National Health Service. It is the party of PFI which has saddled the NHS with debts up to £300 billion. So we're now in a situation that for every £10 that is put into the NHS, £1 is spent paying off the debt of PFI. It is the party that oversaw the scandal of South Staffs. It is a party which has two prominent members of the House of Lords, Lord Wilner and Lord Winston, who are calling for people to be charged when they go to see their GP. We would not allow that to happen in UKIP. What we want to see is an end to health tourism, which is costing our economy about £2 billion a year. And we want to say that if you come to this country, you should have private health insurance. And from that £2 billion saving, we would do away with hospital car parking charges in England, which are nothing more than a tax on the sick. Ladies and gentlemen, we have common sense policies when it comes to the economy. We want to raise everybody on minimum wage out of taxation altogether. So the first £13,000 that you earn, you do not pay tax on. That will put more money in people's pockets, and it would encourage people to come off welfare. We want to make £32 billion worth of savings, and we are the only political party, not just in this election, but in the history of British politics, that has had its manifesto signed off by an independent economic think tank. So we know where every penny is coming from and where every penny is going to. And how would we make those savings? Well, the first thing we would do is we would scrap the vanity project that is HS2, which isn't going to benefit Newcastle, isn't going to benefit Liverpool, isn't going to benefit Sunderland, or Blythe, or Wansbeck, or Hartlepool, or anywhere else up here. It's there for the benefit of one place and one place alone, and that is London. And we want to see the money saved from HS2, around £50 billion over the next 20 years, reinvested in local transport networks. Let's ensure that the A1 becomes an extension of the M1. Let's ensure that the A69 is dualled. Let's ensure that the transport network up here in the northeast of England is invested in properly. Let's ensure that you guys get more money spent per head on infrastructure. And equally, we also will make savings from scrapping the Barnett formula, which ensures that Scotland gets an extra £1,400 per head spent on it than the English. We believe that that is fundamentally unfair. We believe that the union needs to be rebalanced economically so the English get a fair deal. Ladies and gentlemen, we also want to make savings from the foreign aid budget. A foreign aid budget that is running at around £12 billion at the moment. £32 million every single day we hand away in foreign aid. It will rise to £15 billion over the next Parliament. And what we're saying is that we want to see that cut by 80%. Because we don't believe that we should be giving foreign aid to countries that are richer than ourselves. We are giving foreign aid at the moment to China, which is expected to be the largest economy on the planet by 2050. We're giving foreign aid to Brazil. We're giving foreign aid to Argentina, which has just bought a load of Russian jets, which saber rattles over the Falklands. We give foreign aid to India, although the other parties say we don't. Yes, we do. We just now call it technical assistance. You talk about a political sleight of hand. Yeah, we're giving this foreign aid to India, and India has its own space program, its own nuclear program. It has more millionaires and billionaires than ourselves. It's told us it doesn't even want or need our money, yet we continue to give it. And UKIP has a common sense policy when it comes to foreign aid. We want our money spent on our people because we believe that charity begins at home.
Yes.
On defence, simple, common sense. We were the anti-war party from the beginning. We were opposed to the war in Iraq. We were opposed to us getting involved in Libya because we realised that what would probably come after the evil dictator that was Gaddafi would possibly be worse. And isn't it proving worse? You have a humanitarian crisis now in the Mediterranean because when Gaddafi went, the traffickers and the jihadists moved in. Libya is so dangerous now that the official government of Libya has to meet on a boat off the coast of Tobruk. We were opposed to us getting involved in Syria, and we played an integral part in ensuring that that vote in the House of Commons went against Cameron and Hague, because we knew that if they provided weapons to these so-called rebels in Libya and Syria, it would end up in the hands of the jihadists. And if Cameron and Hague would have got their way a couple of years ago, ISIS would be murdering people now with weapons that we had given them. We made the right decision not involving ourselves in Syria. But although we're anti-war, we do believe that we should maintain 2% of British GDP being spent on defence. We want to maintain Trident, because although Trident has not been fired, it is used every single day as a deterrent. The only country, ladies and gentlemen, in our lifetime that has given up its nuclear weapons has been the Ukraine. And look at what has happened there. And if we give up Trident, do we think Russia will give up her nuclear weapons? Do we think Pakistan will give up her nuclear weapons? India, North Korea? It will not. And as Nye Bevan said as Foreign Secretary, to do away with your nuclear weapons would be like sending the Foreign Secretary naked into the United Nations. It is nonsense, ladies and gentlemen. We also want to ensure that the brave boys and girls who go out and fight on our behalf are treated correctly when they return home. 1 in 10 homeless people, ladies and gentlemen, is a veteran. It is a scandalous statistic. And what we're saying in UKIP is that we are the only party that will sign up in reality to the military covenant, which is an agreement that the armed forces have between them and between the British people and the British government, that veterans will be looked after. And that is why, ladies and gentlemen, we will ensure that anybody who has served in the armed services for longer than 12 years will be guaranteed a job when they return home. Ladies and gentlemen, UKIP was formed to fight the European Union. That is why we exist. We are a political infant. If you think that you have a Labour Party that is over 100 years old, you have a Liberal Party which in its current guise was formed in 1987, but it goes back to the 1850s under Palmerston. You have a Conservative Party which is also over 150 years old. We were only formed in 1993, and we were formed by ordinary people who felt that the political class at Westminster did not represent the views of the people when it came to the issue of Europe. And haven't we come a long way since? At the moment, UKIP's national membership stands at 45,000 people. We have 2 members of the House of Commons, 3 members of the House of Lords, 400 councillors up and down the country. If you take parish and town councillors into consideration as well, that figure is somewhere near 1,000. And we were born back in 1993 in the London School of Economics, specifically to fight the European Union. And we have been exceptionally successful. Indeed, last year, we won the European elections. We became the first party since 1906 to go out and win a national election that hasn't been Labour or the Conservatives. We are making political history because we've educated people when it comes to the EU. People now know it is costing this country £55 million every single day to be members of this corrupt organisation that hasn't had its account signed off for 19 years on the bounce. And what we're saying in UKIP is simply this: should we really be handing over £55 million a day when 1 million of our own people last year were forced to go to food banks? Wouldn't it make sense for that £55 million a day to be spent here in this country, on our schools, on our hospitals, on our transport network, and ensuring that our boys and girls in the armed forces have the best equipment possible? But of course we get half of that £55 million a day given back to us. But then the joke of it all is that the EU then tells us how we have to spend our own money. And then we are forced to put signs up all over cities, like Newcastle, like my own city of Liverpool, like Manchester, like Birmingham. Signs which say this project was built with EU money. Thank the EU. There is no such thing as European money. It is your taxation. And the other half is spent building motorways in Romania. It built the motorways in Spain. It built a sewage system in Budapest. It built an underground in Warsaw. I'm sorry, times are hard in this country, and our tax and our money should be spent on our own people. Ladies and gentlemen, the other reason UKIP was formed was to fight for democracy. And they may slander us with racist or xenophobe. There is nothing racist or xenophobic about saying that the people who should be making the decisions that affect your lives should be the people who you elect at Westminster. Because at the moment, around 70% of the laws of this country do not begin in the House of Commons. They begin not even in the European Parliament. They begin in a building about a mile up the road from the European Parliament called the Parliament Building. And in that Parliament Building, 28 European commissioners meet in secret and draw up the legislation. These people are unelected, and they are surrounded by working groups who advise them on the legislation to create. And they don't tell us who sits on these working groups, but we know who it is. It's the corporates, it's the multinationals, it's big business. Brussels is awash with lobbyists. Ladies and gentlemen, we fought 2 world wars in the last century. We sent our brave boys up into the skies above southern England in the Battle of Britain. We sent our brave boys onto the beaches of Normandy to fight for British sovereignty and democracy. And shame on those politicians in the second half of the last century and the beginning of this, who gave away something that was never theirs to give. They gave away British sovereignty, ladies and gentlemen, to the European Union, and we in UKIP are committed to taking it back. We are the fastest growing political movement in Britain. We are changing British politics, and we will change it forever. This election is about cracking the dam of British politics. I predict in the second half of this decade that dam will collapse altogether. Nigel Farage is leading the People's Army. We are on the march. We have the establishment on the run. Politics in this country has not seen anything like this since the birth of the Labour Party under Keir Hardie. Yes, it saw the SDP in the early 80s attempt to break the mould of British politics, but it failed. It failed because it was a top-down organisation founded by former Labour Party cabinet members and in Roy Jenkins, a former European Commissioner. We are not a top-down organisation. We are a bottom-up organisation. We are an organisation that has got Labour on the run here in the north of England. I said earlier in an interview, we will be the boot that goes up the backside of the Labour Party to kick it into action. Because at the moment, you have a one-party state up here, where you have lazy and lethargic Labour MPs who feel that they don't have to do anything to be re-elected, and they are letting you down time and time again. UKIP is here. UKIP is here to stay. We are not going to go away. We have the establishment quaking in their boots. We have the Labour Party on the run. So if you are a UKIP member, keep up the good work. Continue to deliver leaflets. Continue to write letters. Continue to knock on doors. If you're not a UKIP member, get on board the People's Army. Get on the march. And let's not just change politics in this country for the better. Let's change society as a whole. And you can make a start on May the 7th by going out and voting in Wansbeck for Melanie Hurst. Thank you very much.